Welcome to the Market Mystics Podcast. I'm Joshua.
I'm Kim. Let's dive in.
Welcome to fall in Kansas. Kim was just saying that her eyes are watering, and I have to think it's because the seasons are changing and there's like everything's kind of starting to die and change, and dust and things are, I think just changes of seasons affect things like that.
Potentially. Also, you listeners get the pleasure of potentially hearing the storms that are raging outside.
That's true.
Also, welcome to Kansas.
Yeah.
Because this is what happens here.
It's quieted down a little bit, but when we first hopped on the call, the thunder at Kim's and the rain at my house was very, very evident on our microphones.
That's true. We'll see. I'll see if I can take it out. Maybe you guys won't hear anything. You'll be like, what the heck are you talking about? But enough of that. I want to talk about, I don't know that. Okay. I just told Josh, this is full disclosure. Just know this is me being very real. I was just telling Josh, I have this one thought about something to talk about, but I don't know where it could go from there. So we're just going to start talking about it because Josh has an idea. But I was just telling him, and so now I'll tell you, over the last 2 weeks, Jason, my husband, and I have been spending virtually every waking moment packing up and moving our studio from one location to another. It's in the same city, miles away from each other. But it's a completely different space. So we're going from having like multiple offices and then like a conference room for a studio and a lobby to having just one space for everything. And so it was taking a lot of rethinking how things were set up and making sure things are cohesive with all the different pieces from the different rooms that we used to have. And it has been exhausting. Like I was telling him, like there were days when I was burning more than 2,000 calories a day from all of the stuff we're doing. And it was lifting heavy things and moving heavy things. And it was installing walls and trim and staining things and installing things. And it was just crazy, right? Moving furniture, all the things. However, I find myself like invigorated by this. And I was just thinking about this yesterday as I was cooking my first home cooked meal in the last 2 weeks, last night. And I was thinking about how good I felt about it. And was kind of having this conversation. The Lord was like, yeah, it's because you're creating like I create and you were made to create. And I was having this kind of back and forth. I've always hesitated to call myself a creative because I feel like it's reserved for people who are in the arts or who make music or make meaningful art for the world. And the Lord was like, no, you're definitely a creative. Like I've put that piece of me in you. And so when you activate that and work in that, yeah, it's going to feel fulfilling because you're really partnering with this piece of me that I put in you. So that was kind of my story, but I just had the revelation last night that I can also be a creative, even if it doesn't look like the traditional creative type of person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think it's great to have that realization because there's so many times where we categorize ourselves as one thing. And then through life experiences, we realize maybe it's different or maybe there's more nuance to it than we thought there was. I think like one of my thoughts is like how you used to say like, oh, I'm prophetic because sometimes I do that. And God's like, no, you're not really prophetic. You're more this. It's just because of this that this happens. And, but when we categorize things, it
limits sometimes.
It limits, but it is also helpful to like have things categorized. But it can be absolutely limiting if you allow it to stay there. But one of the thoughts that I had was like, you wouldn't have known, like those things wouldn't have had a chance to come up. You wouldn't have had a chance to walk through them or have those conversations if you weren't doing something.
Yeah.
And that, so I just recently listened to an interview with the CEO of Coinbase, and just not a plug for Coinbase or him, just was an interesting interview. And he made the comment that action produces information. And he was talking about how like when he started Coinbase, he was working for Airbnb. Could be wrong about that, but I'm pretty sure it's Airbnb. But it was like a tech startup, and it was in the early days of it. And he's like, I was an early employee. I had stock. I had all this going for me. I was making a pretty solid salary. But I just had the thought of like, if I don't leave and do something, like I won't, like, he's like, I know there was something else there. Like, I know there was more there, but I had to go do something to find out what the more that was there was. And so like he had started going to like, Bitcoin meetups and learning about some of this new financial system, and really fell in love with it and fell in love with the ideology of it, and was like, well, what does this need? Oh, this needs a place for people to store it and to interact with each other. And he's like, one of the big things that was challenging was there was no market for people to buy and sell it. Like you had to, in the early days, like you had to be mining it or trading with someone who had mined it. And so like he was like, oh, I could help create this central thing. But he was talking about the importance of like starting the process to learn what it needed to be, because he had no idea what it needed to be when he started. When he left the first tech startup to go do his own tech startup, he had no idea what it needed to be. And I'm thinking of like how many times we sit and we analyze and we categorize ourselves as like, oh, this is where I'm at. This is my capability. This is where I'm at financially. This is where I'm at in skill level. But if you just take some action, sometimes it reveals information that illuminates the next thing. So in your case, it opened up some doors and thoughts with creativity, and in his case, it opened up doors in, both it changed his personal financial situation significantly, but it honestly has helped shape the landscape of how cryptocurrency changes hands and moves in the world. Like they were one of the first big exchanges, and they, a lot of people have made things that followed them from it. And so I just think like it had me really thinking of like, man, there's an importance in like taking the next step, and maybe taking the next step looks like signing up for a class that, is in something you don't know much about, and you're like, oh, I'm not very skilled in that, but signing up for just an informational class, or it's like, starting the process of like, you want something different, so you create a profile on Indeed or LinkedIn or something like that. Like, I just think that sometimes like so much flows into our life when we take the first step and like start to move.
Yeah, for sure. I think we've talked about this recently, but just last week, Jason was suggesting we talk about a similar concept, something very much along these lines, and kind of the concept of like praying and waiting versus praying and taking action.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a lot to be said, honestly, for both. But I think most times there will be an action component somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've talked about this too. I feel like we've talked about everything on this podcast, but let's just do it again. Do you remember the little comic strip where there's a flood and the guy's on his roof, like out of the water,
Mm-hmm.
and he's praying to God, like, God,
Yeah.
I know you'll save me. Save me, send something to save me, right? And then there's a boat that goes by and is like, hey, let us help you. And he's like, no, God will save me. And so then they go on, and then there's like a helicopter that goes by. They're like, hey, we're here to save you. And they're like, no, God will save me. And then it shows him like at the pearly gates because he's now died. He didn't get saved. And he's like, what happened, God? I thought you said you were going to save me. He's like, I sent a boat and I sent a helicopter. But I think it's a good illustration of like, yes, pray for the things, come in line with what God's will is. But oftentimes there are action items that need to happen in order for that to be outworked. And if we simply sit and wait, and I'm the first to always go back to be still and know, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we only have that as the way of getting what you need, I think you might miss a lot of boats and you might miss a lot of helicopters. And you might just go down with that ship because you've missed the things he sent for those doors to be opened.
Yeah. It makes me think of it's not Isaiah. The young boy who goes and lives in the temple.
I don't know.
Let me just Google it real quick, which is great podcast. It's great podcast content for me to Samuel. Samuel's the one I'm looking for. He is in the temple and he's like sleeping and he hears a voice that's like calling his name. He doesn't know what to do. So the next morning he goes and talks to the priest and explains what's going on. And, or he like gets up and runs in. The priest's like, I didn't call you. He goes back to bed. Hears the voice again, runs to the priest. The priest said, I didn't call you. And he goes, but maybe the Lord's calling you. So if he says it again, respond to him. Then he goes back to bed and he hears the voice and then he goes, speak, Lord, for your servant's listening. And like that to me is like kind of this, like we can sit in our prayer closet, we can meditate, we can pray, but when the Lord speaks, you got to answer. Like there's got to be a response. And maybe it's as simple as just acknowledging that he's speaking. Maybe it's getting on the boat or the helicopter. Maybe it's signing up for the class. Maybe it's just like moving your office from one place to another so that he can open up a little bit more of your identity. Like, and no matter like, I think the important part of that story is like, he didn't know who was calling him. And so once he realized, oh, the Lord's trying to speak to me in this situation, it opened up that door. And the same with you and your move. Like you could have gotten overwhelmed in the move and overwhelmed in the I haven't eaten a good meal in a few weeks and overwhelmed in the exhaustion and like planning. Or you could have said, oh, like what you did, like, oh, like you get to exercise your creativity and how do we make this old thing work in the old setup work in a new space. And you were telling me before we started recording that it might be your favorite studio you guys have done yet. And so it's like like that is like it's like the potential that comes from action is way more than I think we realize.
Yeah. As you were saying all of that, it also made me think about the importance of being open to reformation, like things being reformed. We moved and had to take all the things and kind of put them back together in a way that they had never fit together before. And change is hard. Some people really thrive on change. I am one of those people, and I do like change, but the process is not always fun.
Yeah.
But sometimes, and I've learned this in so many parts of my walk. This is why I'm talking about this. So many parts of my journey with the Lord, he has taken something that was already established and he has broken it completely down and then put it back together in a different way that functions so much better, that kind of shines his light so much better, and that highlights and exemplifies how he made me so much better. Not that he made me better. I mean that it exemplifies how he made me in a better way.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes, I don't think you always have to be somebody who is just an agent of change and like it's always change for everyone all the time. But sometimes when those things come up, it's easy to get dragged down by the task of it or the disconnecting from the old, which is also difficult. And then you might be holding on to nostalgia for what was. We've talked about this a million times too. But what if you like kind of went with open hands and said, all right, Lord, what is in this? What are you going to show me in this? Because honestly, it's not like I didn't know in this. It's not like I didn't know that there's some creativity in me that he's made. He's actually been revealing a lot of things about who he is as a creator and how he's made us to also create with him. A lot of that in the last year and a half or so to me. But this one was different. Like, it was like, I know that you think this is reserved for someone else, but this is actually for you as well. And it was one of those pieces of identity. Like, if you engage in heaven, you might eat the scroll and you might like go dive for gems and you might have like some big happening that is super mystical and like existential about the revealing of your identity. But sometimes he does it in the most basic ways too.
Yeah.
Like when you're exhausted and laying on the floor and like, oh, I can't move. But that was amazing. Right. Yeah. But also, I don't think he ever reveals our identity to limit us. I think he reveals our identity to show us more of what's possible and more of what we're made for. You were talking about this early on, but I think it's not meant to define us and put us in a box. I think it's meant to identify strengths and open doors.
Yeah, I think it does. And you said something I thought was good. Is like sometimes it's when you're lying on the floor exhausted. Like sometimes I think it takes us getting to that point because we like we're so busy doing our own thing, writing our own narrative, that sometimes it takes the exhaustion laying on the floor. I have nothing left in the tank for him to be like, oh, hey, did you see this? Did you notice this? And I think it's really interesting because we were also talking before we started recording about like going to a sensory deprivation chamber. And not that we have, we're just both interested in it.
I totally want to do it.
And like the thought process of like, yeah, just that quiet moment of calm, peace, letting the cares of the world wash away, letting new thoughts come, like getting to close the loop on some old thoughts. Like sometimes it just takes that moment of like, we're constantly surrounded by feedback. The world is a feedback machine, and sometimes getting in a spot where there isn't feedback is really helpful.
On that note, I really do want to do that.
I think it sounds fun.
I think it sounds fun too. Like, I feel like just taking away any of the distractions it's just an hour. For just 1 hour, I feel like I could get 20 years worth of stuff like figured out, done. I don't know, settled. Like that's what it feels like to me now. Maybe I should do it and report back. Maybe we should both do that.
And report back. I think it sounds fun. It also, I don't know, there's so many things in that like space that sound fun to me. Like the sensory, like the float tank sounds fun. Hyperbaric chamber sounds fun. I don't know. There's a lot of things where it's like, there's a lot of alternative health things that work by getting you to just stop moving. And I think that that's very interesting. Like, whether or not it's, okay, go sit in a cold plunge, or go sit in a sauna, or go float in a float tank, or go lay in a hyperbaric chamber. Like, there's several examples right there of just things that just require you to sit and be still. And I'm like, man, maybe that's a big piece of this. Maybe that's why some of those things work.
I think it's super possible. I also don't know where to find a hyperbaric chamber that would be accessible. I'm not friends with Gary Brecka. I know he has a room of. You could?
Yeah.
I know you're not going to do it on the podcast, but you should tell me where one is.
I will. We both know a person who has one that they rent out.
I bet I know who it is.
Yeah. I bet we can figure it out. But yeah, we have access to this stuff.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something about the doing, and there's something about the being. And we've been through a lot with like turning off the doing so that you're okay with just being. But I also think there's absolute necessity for the doing. It just can't go before the being.
I think it's this like balance thing. Like if you have constantly been going, then what your body needs is to like learn to sit and pay attention to what's going on around it. If you haven't been going, what your body needs is like the motivation or just the willpower to like get up and move. Yeah. I think they're both important, and they're both important in different situations.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like this has been a short episode, but I don't really know where else to go with it.
It's all right. We're 25 minutes in. They got something good. Hopefully they got something good out of it.
Hopefully there was something good, and it wasn't just us and our musings and ramblings to each other.
Usually what this is.
That is what the podcast is, but it's still, the podcast is also about redefining value. So I hope that there was some value add. I guess that's what I'm trying to say.
Absolutely. Right. All right, guys, we will see you next Monday or Thursday if you're a member on YouTube.
Hey, are you guys a member yet? Because you should become one. There's a button. Josh knows where it is. He'll say it, maybe.
It's usually right below the screen on, like, when you subscribe on YouTube, there's usually a button that just says join. And you can join our subscription on YouTube, pay a small fee, and you get access to double the content. And
that's true. And there's
if we do interviews, if we do interviews, there's always a part that goes in there. You know, we're always trying to add value.
That's true. But honestly, you should join because there's some really wild and wacky things over there. Some really like good value, but also that's where we get a little more into the weird stuff.
Yes.
And that's where we talk about a lot of crypto stuff. And like Josh said, extended interviews, and it's good stuff over there. Come join us.
So subscribe to this video, then click the join button, and we'll see you on Thursday. Thanks for tuning in to the Market Mystics. If you are hungry for more, don't miss out on our exclusive bonus content available only to YouTube members. Demystify the world of cryptocurrency in the cryptosphere and explore everything from outrageous conspiracies to curious current events and out there spiritual musings. Nothing is off limits in Let's Get Weird. Become a channel member on YouTube to unlock these extra episodes. See you in the bonus episodes.